Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Rain Whalen.
And I'm Candy McElroy.
Okay, that one was better.
Better. Yeah. Better. I got it mixed up in my head. Here's the thing, is Haley told me seconds before we started, and I forgot it immediately. So, that's better, yeah.
Because I was gonna say, because now it came back to me, because you used Shane McGillicuddy.
Okay, yeah, you're right. And so, yeah, McElroy is way better. Yeah, that one's way better. Anyway, whatever. We started.
Well, welcome back, everyone. So, we were talking off mic, because I specifically withheld this because I wanted to talk about it on mic. So we were talking about off mic about the things we watched over the last week, and you've watched more than me. I haven't watched a whole lot, mainly because I've actually been in the process. Well, I've beaten it and now I'm replaying it. The Last of Us Part 2 to gear up for the second season of The Last of Us.
Right.
Because, shit, man. I've been trying to warn everyone who became a fan of The Last of Us last year. It was last year, right?
Yeah.
Last year? To gear up for that next season because it's going to be a rough one.
Yeah.
The game is amazing. The game is phenomenal. I can't wait to see how Craig Mazin tackles this story of the cycle of violence, which I think he'll be able to do no problem. But then that kind of led me down a rabbit hole after I finished the game, because I remembered hearing that Naughty Dog, the developer, was releasing a documentary about making the game and post, like, because the documentary was supposed to come out when the game came out, but because of COVID, they just never released it. And then I guess now with the popularity of the show and the fact that they remastered The Last of Us Part 2 for the PlayStation 5, they're like, you know what, we're gonna finally release all this. And it's like, look, I'm not saying that a documentary about a game developer was rough to watch, because I mean there are true crime documentaries out there that are awful to watch.
Yeah.
Shout out to our Dear Zachary episode. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, definitely.
But watching this documentary about people who are just trying to make a game, specifically a game that took them 4 years to make.
Yeah.
Like, I believe they essentially said this was like the longest game that Naughty Dog ever had, like took longest to make. It was insane when they did sort of like the new footage of hearing everyone talk about the death threats that they got. So I don't know if you knew that.
You know what? I think I've seen clips of this documentary on TikTok because I scroll through TikTok all the time, and yeah, I've seen clips of them talking about it. I didn't know that's what it was. I just thought this was like some like bonus features on the game or something. I didn't know.
Laura Bailey, who plays Abby in the game, which, for spoiler alert for a 4-year-old game, everyone, she's the one who kills Joel, because the game got leaked. Yeah, it's a big spoiler. That's another reason why I've been trying to gear everyone up for the second season, because they have to do it. I don't want to see Pedro Pascal die, but they have to do it, bro. They have to kill him. And more to the point, we have to see him die on screen. Like, it can't be an off-screen death. We have to. Anyway, that's besides the point. It was just insane. Like, Laura talking about, receiving death threats, so the game got leaked. Like, almost the entire game got leaked, and it was released out of order. So like Neil Druckmann, who created the game, who's co-president of Naughty Dog, who also helped Craig on the show, also received death threats. And then when Joel's death scene got leaked, Laura Bailey got just the most horrendous death threats. And it was just, after the 2 hours was up, I was like, this is insane. Like, all these people were trying to do was just make a video game.
Yeah, I think
And
that's sort of an overreaction for sure. I would agree with that.
well, and I was telling Ashley about it, and here's what's the most fascinating thing. So the game got leaked. Naughty Dog put out a statement like, hey, like, try to avoid these as best you can. And then the game officially comes out in, I think, July of 2020, to critical acclaim, like being hailed as a masterpiece, 10 out of 10. And Ashley was like, yeah, and I guarantee none of those fucking people ever apologized.
Probably
And I
not.
was like, yeah, probably not. Probably not.
I think it's super mad like that over video game. You know what I mean? They're not like the apologizing type. You know.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. So that's what you've
But
been
yeah,
doing, just playing
yeah,
replaying the
yeah.
game.
I'm replaying it now because now that I've beaten it, I've unlocked some things like unlimited ammo, which
Oh,
comes
cool.
in super handy, especially when you're playing as Abby and you fight an infected called the Rat King, which
Ooh.
is supposedly the longest infected ever. Like, it like has like morphed, and yeah. But yeah, if anyone wants to check out the documentary, it's called Grounded 2, because they did a documentary about the first game called Grounded. This one's called Grounded 2. You can find it for free on the Naughty Dog YouTube channel. 2 hours long, and it's an interesting watch.
Okay. So that would be like your recommendations that we're doing recommendations.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
So mine would be, it's not even close. It would be go see Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest wherever you can.
Yeah, man.
It's
I
incredible. I
saw some
watched it this weekend.
I saw some stuff about that on because A24 produced it, right? Didn't
Yeah.
they? Yeah, I saw some stuff on their Instagram page about it, and I did a little bit more digging, and I was like, okay, I might need to take a look at this. And then yeah, heard all the praise that it's been getting, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna have to watch this now.
I think so. I think you're gonna have to see it. I can't wait to watch it again. I thought it was so well done, so beautifully shot, and it's. I mean, it's not what you're expecting for sure. If you know what it's about, which is about the House family. I think that's how you pronounce it. HOSS. That lived next door to Auschwitz. He was the camp director of the internment camp, and it's their day to day life basically, living next door. And so the entire film's main focus is in the house and on the premises of the house. Sorry, my cat is being insane right now, and I wish she wasn't. I apologize if you're hearing her jump around. And
it's Annie.
Yes, it's Annie. Doing this. She was so calm all day. It's always how it goes. But yeah, no, it's incredible. The way Jonathan Glazer shooting this thing was amazing. He said that he would set up the cameras all over the house. He always had at least like 3 or 4 going all at once. Like several microphones hidden around. Absolutely no cameramen, no crew present. They were all at a different location watching on screens. And so the actors were by themselves. You can sort of kind of feel that isolation when you're watching, especially since it's such a cramped space anyway, that you're like, there's no way that there are other people there.
Yeah.
But it's incredible. I can't sing its praises more. The Zone of Interest is by far, the best movie I watched over the weekend. And, I also watched The Iron Claw, which was also great. But Zone of Interest just, blew it out of the water. It's so good. So you got to see it.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a good year for A24 right now, man. And then all the stuff they got in the pipeline. I think the thing that makes me the most excited from them is Alex Garland's Civil War.
Yeah, Civil War's gonna be great. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
And it's gonna be A24's first like IMAX film. I'm excited
about She's over there. Sorry. Again, like cat is going nuts. Yeah, I'm excited about Civil War. It's not A24 related, but Love Lies Bleeding. I think that's going to be great. Neon.
No, it's A24.
Is that? I thought it was Neon. Okay. Never mind. It sort of feels like a neon film. You know, it feels more.
I get that. Yeah, I could feel that. Yeah, it looks good. You know, it's got Kristen Stewart, who I think is, you know, I think she's making all the right career moves. And then it's got the girl from The Mandalorian and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I feel bad because she's actually a really good actor, and I don't remember her name.
Ed Harris is also in it as well.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's gonna be really exciting. I'm excited to see that. And of course, you know, Dune is coming out in a couple weeks. So we gotta go see that.
I kind of told Ashley, I was like, "You're gonna have to watch part 1." I was like, "Because we're gonna see part 2." And she's like,
I told Haley the same thing. Yeah, that
she's like,
yeah, she's not excited either. So it's
yeah, she was
we're just so listen. If we lived in the same city, we would just go together and it'd be fine. But we don't
exactly.
So
I was like, what? You want me to drive 5 hours away to go see Jeremy? I was like, because I will. Like, I'll drive 5 hours so we can go see this movie.
Yeah,
but
we'll see, dude. Yeah.
One final other A24 news that I'm really excited for. Then we can jump into the episode. The Sympathizer finally coming to HBO or to Max. I am so excited for The Sympathizer. It looks so good.
Yeah.
With and RDJ is pulling quadruple duty, playing 4 different characters.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
When is that out?
Pretty soon, I think. I think it's like just going to be a mini series. Hang on, I'm finding it right now. Shut up. It is premiering April 14th.
Okay, April
on Max. It'll
very cool.
It's listed as just a mini series. I'm sure 6-7 episodes, 8 probably.
Cool.
But
cool.
But yeah.
All right. Neat.
Yeah. So, buddy, what are we talking about today?
Okay. So today, we are discussing Alfonso Cuarón's 2001 coming of age story, Tu Mama Tambien.
Oh man. So I'm gonna admit something to you.
Okay.
I watched it today.
Okay, today.
There's more. I'll tell you more once we get done with this. But yeah, I watched it today, and it was not what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it was everything I wanted. I did. Anyone statement to the show probably that whole thing may have just gotten bleeped or something.
Sure.
But yeah, no. It was awesome, man. It was, I'm not going to say you overhyped it. But I remember like way back when we first got started, you were already talking about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this movie? Like, and I remember reading a little bit about it and seeing Diego Luna talk about it on I think like a Variety interview. And I was like, okay, I didn't know he was in it.
Actually,
and then,
that's funny you mentioned that because I was watching it the other day and I was going through stuff about it and I was like, again, this is how far removed I am from things that are very popular these days. I was like, I know what Maribel Verdu is doing. I know what Gael Garcia Bernal is doing. It's like, what is this kid doing? What's he up to? And so I looked him up. I had no idea he's the guy in the new Star Wars stuff. I had no clue that's who that was.
Yeah, bruh. Cassian Andor, my guy.
No idea. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So he made it. So that's really good. Because
yeah, it's very interesting that our three leads have now all been in something like in a franchise. You know, Diego, of course, in Star Wars. Gael in Marvel, Werewolf by Night.
That's right.
Which was
great.
The fucking best thing. And then Maribel in The Flash, which, as I mentioned last week, how underutilized she was in that film. And
you can see why that's so disappointing when you see something like this. Right.
Yeah, especially considering us having done Pan's Labyrinth earlier this season, and her character being polar opposite from Luisa.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh boy. Which we're gonna get into.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was awesome. My only regret is I didn't get to watch my Criterion.
Oh yeah.
I bought it digitally because on iTunes it's $6 right now. So I was like, you know what, that's a steal.
That's a steal.
But I really wanted to watch that.
Yeah.
For the people watching, I'm pointing to my Criterion copy. Because I really wanted to crack it open and put the disc in, but
yeah,
I had to work Sunday, didn't have time with chores and everything, so I was just like, I'll watch it Monday. But anyway, so buddy, since you did the synopsis last week, would you like me to crank out the synopsis?
Sure, yeah.
For this one. Okay. I'm pretty sure you said it last week, but I'm just gonna say it again in case everyone forgot. Tu Mama Tambien is a coming of age story about two best friends, Julio, played by Gael Garcia Bernal, and Tanoch. I can't even pronounce his last name.
No, it's a very Mexican last name, and I've been saying Tinoch with the ch sound. So, and I think that's how they say it in the movie too. So you know what I mean? Like
maybe. Yeah. I only said Tanoch because of the actor who was also in the Marvel movie, Tenoch Huerta, who played Namor in Black Panther. His name is, and it's spelled exactly like that, but everyone says it's Tanoch. So
could be regional. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Anyway, Tenoch, played by Diego Lunga. They're best friends. They're supposed to be like what, 16, 17?
They're 18.
16?
They just graduated.
They're 18.
Or they are graduating.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, these two 18-year-olds who are about to graduate high school. Their girlfriends are going off on a graduation trip to Italy, and they decide to spend the summer as quote-unquote bachelors. And at a wedding for Tenoch's cousin, one of his family members at a wedding reception, he meets his cousin. Hang on, I have it up so I wouldn't forget. His cousin, Hano. Yes, his cousin Hano. They meet Luisa, Maribel Verdu, and they are almost instantly infatuated with her, inviting her out to the beach with them, called that Heaven's they Mouth. Just come up, come up on the fly, called Heaven's Mouth.
Yeah.
And she declines, just because, you know, she's supposed to be in her late 20s, right?
Yeah, she's 28.
Okay. Yeah, so she's literally 10 years older than him, and so, you know, and also they kind of annoyed Hano at the reception, so yeah. But a couple of weeks go by, and Luisa learns from Hano himself that he has been cheating on her, and he's very remorseful about it. But she is just kind of like, you know what? I'm going to take up those two 18-year-olds on their offer. And calls them up and says, you know what, let's go to the beach. And they said, cool, we don't know where to go. And so with the help of their drug dealer friend Saba, he kind of tells them a rough place where they could go that might be great. And the whole film is in the car pretty much, which honestly I loved, which we'll get to in a little bit, of them just passing the time, learning more about Louisa learning more about the boys, and I'm just going to refer to them as the boys for a little bit. And you know, it's very wholesome with an asterisk. You know, they are telling her about their quote unquote sexual escapades, and you know, just being very open and honest with her, but also wanting to impress her because they are two 18-year-olds and they're hanging out with a 28-year-old. But things start to disintegrate. The kind of budding friendship between the three when a distraught Louisa seduces Tenoch, and they end up having the quickest sex ever. And Julio is not jealous. And again, that's another thing I want to get to, I want to touch on. But he is sort of upset by this, which results in him admitting to Tenoch that he's had sex with his girlfriend. Then Luisa has sex with Julio, which then Tenoch admits to Julio that he's had sex with his girlfriend. And it all kind of culminates in Luisa pretty much telling them, you better not fight or I'll leave. Let's go to the beach and have a good time. And it all culminates in this very, I don't want to say odd, but that's the only word I can think of, threesome with everyone, where the boys, I guess, maybe have some underlying feelings for one another. Or we'll talk about that.
I mean, I disagree, but go ahead.
Yeah. And the trip ends. They all go their separate ways. The boys bump into each other a year later, have a very awkward conversation. Julio learns that Luisa had died a few months later from cancer, which is another reason why she decides to go on the trip. And that's Tu Mama Tambien. Yada yada through a lot of stuff just because I know we're going to jump into it. Yeah. So, Jeremy, where would you like to begin?
Well, good question. This movie is so different from your typical film like this, right? At least American films like this are so different, right? I was reading the Roger Ebert review. Roger Ebert gave it 4 out of 4. You know, he loved it, obviously. He was saying that, you know, this movie couldn't have been made in America, number one, because Jack Valenti and the MPAA would have never allowed that.
Yeah, 100%.
The sexuality of this movie is a little too much for, you know, the American film system in order for it to get made and get a wide release, right? Mm-hmm. But what's really interesting about it is that it's not crass, it's not vulgar, it's not made out to be a joke either. Their conversations and their sexual acts and all of that, it's all done with an honest, earnest, you know, casual sense that is real, right? This is how people talk, right? This, you know, this isn't Porky's, this isn't, you know, Meatballs, this isn't whatever, you know what I mean? This isn't American Pie. This is, you know, a very honest take of the sexual awakening coming of age story, right? Which I really like. It sets it apart from the rest of them.
Yeah.
And with these two, it's sort of interesting because, again, as someone who's not really familiar with, it's either a cultural thing, which I don't think so. It's either how close they are, but especially with them at the pool and they're both masturbating, like that was odd to me, right?
Yeah.
But again, I wasn't so much taken aback by it. I mean, it's not something that I would have done, right? um, but I didn't take it as sort of like, again, it wasn't a joke. It wasn't like they weren't being vulgar. They weren't, being disrespectful in any sort of way. They were just, it was just honest. It was, again, this frankness, this earnestness, this honesty of, these two best friends are just, I guess, that close, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, they do kind of chase each other around in the shower a few scenes before that.
that's true. It's, again, that's something I wouldn't have done either. And again, it could be a cultural thing. It could also just be like, this is just how they are, right? This is their friendship, which I
Yeah.
appreciated.
Yeah.
Um, I do love the road aspect of this movie because it not only gives us an insight into who these characters are in this form that's familiar, yet we're also getting a different look at Mexico, right? We're getting to look at the social and political state of Mexico in that particular time period. But I think the one thing that I absolutely love the most, I think, in this film is the omniscient narrator. That's what I love the most. Okay.
Yes.
Narration can be derivative, it can be boring, it can lessen the story that's being told. In this case, with the narrator being omniscient, with the narrator being ever present and all knowing, it gives an extra layer of story that goes underneath what we're being told and what we're being shown, right? Some of my favorites are, when they're passing through the town that Tenoch's nanny came from, right? The narrator's letting us know that he's thinking about, oh, I've never visited this place, where this woman that I'm very close to, that's very close to me and my family, is from, and I've never been here before, and saying, that she left when she was 13, and then she started working for Tenoch's family, and then he called her, mom for the first however many years, right?
I think it was 4 years. Yeah.
Which tells you how close they are, right? And even in the very beginning of the film, you can see that she really cares for Tenoch, and that they really do have this bond, and she really does love him, right? And so that's a big deal. And so, but that's an extra thing we get to know, right? The difference in their socioeconomic status between Tenoch and Julio, we get to know how that plays a part in their friendship with our ever-present narrator. And I really like that. We'll get to my favorites in a moment, but those are just some that I really liked. And I think really seals the whole film together. And I think without it, I think it's a good movie, but it's not a great movie. I think with the omniscient narrator, it's truly a great story because we get those extra layers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think, if it didn't have these things, I don't think it would have gotten a Criterion release. Maybe it might have. Who knows? But yeah, the thing that caught me off guard in a good way, and I'm glad you mentioned it already, is the class difference between Tenoch and Julio. Because I feel like that's just another layer to their friendship. That Tenoch, he comes from money, and Julio's family is hardworking, and they have to earn everything that they have. And I was wondering when it was going to come out, this difference between them. And again, you're right, because it is I feel like most coming of age films, you know, like the one that's been coming to mind every time we mention the genre of coming to age, has been Stand By Me. I don't know why that one specifically, but um, uh, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
It's okay. You were talking about their
The,
classes.
the
Their
class, yes,
classes.
yes, yes, yes. Um, yes, because you were saying that it is a very honest portrayal, and I agree, it is very honest because you know it finally, when it finally does come up, it comes up so naturally after Tenoch admits to Julio that he had sex with his girlfriend, and you know Julio gets mad and wants to fight him, and Tenoch calls him a hick, or at least in the translation, he says hick, and which obviously was an insult. And I was like, there it is, because even deep down, Tenoch sees him as different. That
Mhm.
we are not in the same league here, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, that was something that caught me off guard. But again, I really liked. I really, because I think they're for their friendship, one, to really be believable is, yeah, there has to be this something that separates them, whether it be class, whether it be age or something. And I like that Alfonso chose a class difference.
Mhm.
Um, very reminiscent of our season four, season three premiere, Parasite.
Mm. Yeah. 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 Um, and like with that, with the sort of difference between Julio and Tenoch, which isn't really that. I mean, it's different, obviously, yes, because Tenoch is, they're wealthy, and then Julio's is sort of just working class or middle class, right?
Mm.
But then when we get out of Mexico City and then we see like what people are like outside of that, outside of Mexico City, it's sort of again a different Mexico, right?
Mm.
It's even a starker difference, you know, of how people are and how people live. And I love that we don't dwell on these things too long, but when they're driving by certain things, like the bug that is covered in the with the wedding, the congratulations, they just got married, right? That was fun. Then you have like the drug bust with the cops
Yeah.
and they're hopping out of the car, right? And then you have the that girl who's like their queen for the day or whatever, and they're asking for donations or whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a way to gain an income, right? And then the places they stop along the way, and when Louisa gets that bear
Yes.
that has her
Yes.
name, and then you get the story of where that comes from and why it was so important to her, and um, I like that, again, the road movie, right? Road movies are
Mm-hmm.
always so cool. And they always give you this other perspective of ways of life and giving the characters sort of a way to see things beyond their own lives, right?
Right.
Which I really, really like. And that, I guess, that can bring us to Louisa, who is amazing.
Dude.
Mary Belver, she is incredible. Um, so yeah, I mean, when we first meet her, we sort of um I felt bad for her because she's essentially just being hit on by these two kids, and they're bugging her and they're annoying her or whatever. um they're too much, right? They're so energetic and they're so excited to be talking to someone like Louisa that they just um they're just like vibrating, and I felt bad.
Yeah.
But then we're when we get to know a little bit more about her, and when she goes to the doctor, and we don't really dwell on that too much either. I think we're made to forget about it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course when Hano calls and says that he's been cheating on her, and you just feel so bad for her again, and I like that she decides then to just, what, let's let's be free, right? She had taken that
Mm-hmm.
that magazine quiz that said that she was not letting herself be free, right? Is holding herself captive and, not letting herself enjoy life, essentially. And so that on top of all the other stuff, she's just like, you know what? Let's just go with these kids. Let's, go enjoy life and let's go to this beach and it'll be fun. It's very important that they are graduating or have already graduated high school and, that they are essentially adults. Thank God. So don't have to worry about that. And just to, so not only was Tenoch's sex scene with her very short, but Julio's, they are the exact same amount of time. That is important. Like to the second, they're the exact same amount of time.
Okay.
And what I like is that sort of comes naturally as well. I think Louisa she's young enough to where she's not feeling so prudish or not feeling as if she can't have these conversations with these guys, right? I feel like 28, you're still sort of, you don't feel as uncomfortable, right? And of course, she's making conversation. This is how people talk anyway, right? Again, that's the realism in the conversations is impressive and it's incredible. And it's something that, again, sets it apart from these other stories that are like this or try to be like this. But I feel like the sex between them comes somewhat naturally, right? I mean, she's still so distraught and so sad. And so, we don't know it at the time, but she's also dealing with a diagnosis, right? And, that her life is coming to a close and it is, the definition of life is too short. So, yeah, you were going to say something?
Oh, no. I was agreeing. And I was also good. The only thing I was really going to say is, with like Tenoch's sex scene, for example, I think it was a situation of he just happened to be there.
Right. And Louisa says that, when she and Julio were in the car and, they're, starting to, you're about to have sex, and Tenoch runs off. She goes, if that had been Julio that walked in, the same thing would have happened. I mean, it doesn't matter. Right. I don't know if she's meaning to, or she is deliberately trying to have them have these experiences with her. I don't know if she is deliberately trying to have them have this sort of sexual awakening or sexual experiences with someone who is older. I don't know. I feel like no, I don't feel like she is doing this deliberately. I don't think so. I don't think she's trying to teach them anything necessarily.
I
maybe
agree.
not at first.
I agree because I did do some reading after the film was over, and she, I read that when she has sex with Julio, it was meant to kind of equal everything. Well, I had said sex with Tenoch, I'll have sex with Julio, because I think she can see the class difference in the two. And it's almost like, especially as we see after, she tries to comfort Tenoch after he runs off, that, this was always the plan, that they were going to try to sleep with her. But I also agree. I don't think she's doing this deliberately. Maybe she might be doing it as a way to maybe to help them understand that sex isn't like just, like when she's asking them questions like, what do you do? Like, do you make love? Do you do these things? Like, do you essentially, like, do you have foreplay with your girlfriends before you have sex? So like when I say not deliberately, I don't think she's deliberately trying to cause a rift between them or anything like that.
Definitely not. No, I don't think that at all. I'm just trying to think. I don't think her character is being used as a sort of a sort of teacher or a sort of right, because she is her own person and she is doing these things for herself as well, right? Because she is going through these monumental life events, and that I think really she is just trying to get back her own freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And take back all of that. So to say that she's doing this, to which, I mean, nobody said, these are just questions that I thought of.
Yeah.
I think, I think that she's doing this for herself, not necessarily for them necessarily. I think, yes, she's trying to even things out, right? Because I feel like with that narration that, Julio wasn't upset necessarily, he wasn't jealous, but he was something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it might just be, he may feel that Tenoch gets things easier, maybe.
I agree.
And Julio feels that, it's like, oh, of course, right? And again, it's not a jealousy thing. It's just sort of like, yeah, that's just how it goes, right?
I think I know what that might be.
Go ahead.
Envy. Because it's not necessarily, because you're right, because I agree with that. I don't think he was jealous necessarily, but I think he was envious. That he wanted to be the one to sleep with Luisa first, especially considering he's kind of the one who brings her to Tenoch's attention.
Mm-hmm.
At the reception. So I think more so he was envious that he wasn't the first one.
Maybe.
And I also agree with what you said, that he definitely, because Tenoch's comes from money, things come a little bit easier to him than Julio.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And so, like, in terms of the sex scenes between them, I think this third and final one, I have thoughts on that, because I don't feel like there are these underlying feelings between the two of them. I don't think that, because that's not what the story is about necessarily. The story obviously is about sexual discovery and self-discovery, and it's one of those stories that, the way Roger Ebert put it, he said, yes, it's a story that's, after that summer, nothing was ever the same, but this movie redefines what nothing means, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I really liked, because it's not that just nothing was ever the same again. It's these specific things were never the same again, right? And do I feel like them kissing each other, or them having this experience with one another, impacted the way they saw each other and the way that they interacted with one another and what happened to them? Of course, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I don't believe it has anything to do with their attraction to one another. I think that it was just so much all at the same time. And again, they're very young. And so it's like all of this emotion, all of these feelings, all of this was happening all at the same time, and you just get caught up in the moment. I feel like that's what that was. I feel like they just didn't know what else to do. They had so much affection to give, and they didn't know what to do with it. I feel like it's a sort of naivete with their feelings and with their emotions and with their sexuality.
Okay, because that helps. Because I, as I was saying it during the synopsis, I didn't believe that they actually had feelings for one another, because the film at this point hadn't really established that they had feelings for one another, that they were just best friends. But that makes more sense, especially considering, leading up to that, Luisa pretty much laid down the law with them and said, pretty much, none of us are having sex again. Like, you will do what I say,
Yeah.
And then, sort of the culmination of their trip all ends in them drinking and having a good time and eventually having sex. So I think you're right that it was just sort of, they got kind of caught up in the moment. I mean, especially, not to be crass or crude, Luisa was on her knees, so I mean, they
Yeah,
didn't
right,
really have anywhere else to put that affection.
right.
And and I agree. I mean, because especially considering you know the following morning, both of them are very shocked when they kind of look over at the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, but it is such an interesting thing because I thought the same thing when the narrator came back in. Um, I was like, nothing was the same after that.
Pretty much, but it's so specific in the way nothing. Again, that's what gets me, And man, but that night before, so the with them drinking at that bar esque thing out on the beach, incredible sequence because it's a oneer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Before they shot that scene, the night before, Alfonso Cuaron took everybody out. It was at the same place, and they all drank and they had a good time, and they were like, it was essentially the same thing, right? And he said, "All right, remember exactly what you did. Do that." And so that's where they kind of got sort of the rhythm of what they were going to do, and how they were going to talk to one another, and and what order they were going to do things in. Because again, it's a one take thing, right? So it's and it's very long.
Yeah, yeah. Diego Luna in that Variety interview, he said that they had to film it a few times, and he was like, I felt so bad, essentially for the camera operator because it was filmed on film.
Mhm.
So he's like,
They're
he's
heavy.
holding these giant mags, and but he talks about how he refers to it, and maybe I'll need to rewatch the film, but how that sequence is so iconic now, and I could see it. But he said it twice. He's like, this is a very iconic scene
Yeah.
in this film, and I think he's right because it shows. I think the having it filmed in one fluid motion, and everyone's talking over one another, everyone's drinking, and the fact that we follow Louisa
Mhm.
to the jukebox and then follow her back, insane.
I know. And it's sort of not just it's also what's being said, right? They're coming to terms with, they're forgiving one another, right? They're letting bygones be bygones.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting back to the swing of things. And it's also where we get the title of our movie, right? They're talking about Tenoch and Julio are discussing, like, well, I had sex with your girlfriend a couple of times, actually, whatever. And then the other one's like, yeah, me too. I had sex, you know what I mean? Um, and then they're discussing, like, well, did she do this? Did she do this to you or whatever? It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Julio says, and Tu Mama Tambien, and your mom too, which is an insult in Spanish. So if said with any sort of malice or insult, it's one of the worst things you can say to someone.
Yeah.
And of course they're joking around and they're having a good time or whatever. So he doesn't, Tenoch doesn't take it as an insult, but it's it's sort of like they're finally okay again, and they've squashed it and it's fine, and it's maybe even brought them closer together, right?
Yeah, which is fascinating because with the scene we just discussed of the threesome, it essentially tears down all that work that they just
Yeah, which is fascinating because you're right. Again, with the omniscient narrator, so this is where the omniscience is important because the narrator knows the future also, right?
mm-hmm. Yep.
Some of the saddest ones are when he's talking about what will happen next, right? We're not going to see it. We're not going to see these people again, but here's what's going to happen to them, right? The sad one I mean, it isn't the saddest one, but one of the saddest ones is the fisherman, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they've
Chewy.
Chewy, they've met this family and they're the family's brought them in, and they're feeding them, and they're showing them a good time, and they really welcomed them into their, their space at the beach. And they're saying that, soon a hotel is going to buy this land, and Chewie's going to have to leave, and he's going to go do something else. And when he comes back, he's going to be a janitor, and he will never fish again. Yeah. And it's just the finite, the absolution of he will never fish again. And this is something that brings him so much joy in the present, right? And we're seeing it. We're seeing he loves it. And yeah, man, it just hits me so hard because it's just that permanence of, this narrator he just knows, right? And you kind of have to just take it and just, this is what's going to happen to him. And there's something about knowing the future for these characters that we're not going to see anymore within this story. You still get to know the end of theirs. And then, of course, when we get to the restaurant and the two of them, that's the saddest one.
Yeah. I was gonna say, with the whole, the conclusion of Chewie's story, essentially, it kind of reminded me a lot of Irreversible. The end of Irreversible, we see them all happy, knowing what we know, and we're at the end of the film.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of reminded me of. That, we see Chewie and how happy he is, and they said that he's like a fourth generation fisherman.
Yeah. That
they live on the coast essentially, and this is what's brought him so much joy. Yeah, dude, because that like, I was like, damn you, Alfonso, like you're just gonna shatter us like that.
Yeah, I mean it hurts, that we've come to, in a very, very short amount of time, we've come to really like these people.
Especially when they're at the bar and Julio keeps going like, hey Chewie, hey, and like and it's just, and then when the boys run into each other a year later, it's so sad because they're just small talking because it would be too awkward not to, and we're seeing a shell of their former friendship for one another. And
it's really devastating because we get to Louisa gets sort of this beautiful send-off in this, sort of just her being her full self and her realizing, that realizing her freedom, basically, right? She has taken back her freedom. She is whole again. Okay. Which is great. And that's what the boys provided for her, essentially, I think that this, in terms of like what your expectations are, you expect, her to sort of fulfill something for them. But I think it's the opposite. I think they really did help, unknowingly, of course, but they really helped solidify her and her freedom and taking back herself, right? But with the boys, and again, when they meet one another again a year later, it's that, and again, it's heartbreaking, right? Because we're seeing them chit chat, and again, the first punch is that Louise is gone, right? And that she passed away months after they left her there, right? They left her at the beach, and months later she will be dead. Okay. That's hit number one. Okay. Yeah. And that's so devastating. And that, you would think that she would have bonded those two forever. And then,
and because Julio didn't know,
right?
Which I think is hit 1.5.
Yeah, you're right, because they both didn't find out at the same time, or whatever. Like, how would, I think it's because Tenoch is sort of like is related to Hano, which would have found out whatever. So I think maybe that makes more sense. But yeah, and so Louise is gone. That's devastating, right, in and of itself. And then they chit chat a little bit more, and then they go their separate ways. And our narrator comes back, and he lets us know that they will never see each other again. this is the very last time they will ever speak to one another or see each other ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about that permanence that's so sad. And listen, if you think about it, we have, I'm sure, spoke to someone that we used to know very well, and we have probably already spoken to them for the last time. That's probably already happened to us, right?
Probably, yeah.
Which is sad to think about. You don't want to think about stuff like that. I'm sure
Yeah.
that's happened, but just knowing for sure, like in this movie setting, knowing for sure that these two will never speak to each other again, after going through all of that together, after being so close, it's so sad. And I don't know what to make of that yet. I don't know what that means. I don't know what, I know it has everything to do with that last night together. Which isn't technically the last night together because they had to drive home, you know? And
Right, but
even the narrator
I'm
says
sure,
that it was uneventful, nothing really happened, it was whatever, right?
and I think he also said it was silent.
Mm-hmm. It's just, it's
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree because you know that last night that they had with Louisa, as we were kind of discussing, yeah, sure, the boys got caught up in the moment and they kissed one another, but I'm sure it was probably the most magical night that they ever had with Louisa. And yeah, you're right. You would have thought this would have brought all three of them really, really close together. But then again, it seems like everything just came crashing down after that. Uh, Anna and Cecilia, her name, Cece.
Yeah, something like that.
I think just called her Cece the whole movie. Anyway, their girlfriends come home. Yeah, Cecilia. They come home from Italy and they dump the boys. I'm sure they probably had the same conversation of them admitting to one another that they had sex with each other's boyfriends.
Yeah, maybe.
And they dumped the boys. And it for me, I think the saddest part was that how they got over it. Tenoch got over it in 2 months, I think the narrator said, but it took Julio 9 months to move on and start trying to date again.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that kind of broke me first before the news of Louisa, just because it also really showed the class difference again, that Tenoch was just sort of like, well, okay, I guess I'm moving on. But Julio maybe didn't love Cecilia, but maybe really cared for her
Mm-hmm.
and thought maybe he could love her one day, and now he'll never know.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was like that was the first gut punch, and then the reveal of Louisa, I was just like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And but it is very fascinating, and I think if this movie had ended any other way, any like a different coming of age story, like, again, I'll use Stand By Me as an example. The boys all make it home safely, they come out unscathed, and they still remain friends until they all grow up and they all one by one move out of their hometown. um I think if this film ended like that, where everything was fine, and I don't think the ending would have been as impactful. You know had had like, let's say the girls came home, they still broke up with the boys, but they're like, you know what, it's not a big deal because we had an amazing summer together. It's not
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would have hit us harder with the reveal of Louisa dying from cancer.
Yeah, because
So
that bond is definitely gone, right?
yeah.
With Louisa being gone. So there's really nothing left. which is so weird, which is so sad. And
Alfonso, we know you're listening. Why? But then again, I expect no less from Alfonso Cuaron. I mean, it, because again, and I will die on that hill, and I'm sure you would agree with me. If the film ended any other way, I don't think you would have chosen this movie for an episode, to be honest.
Probably not. You're right. I wouldn't have thought about it too much afterward. Again, it's just that, the chain reaction of events and, the sort of permanence of loss of a friendship is so sad. And then, just in a loss of I wouldn't even know what to call Louisa, to them. But, a friend
maybe,
for sure, but.
Oh yeah, friend. I mean, I was toying with the idea of saying maybe the loss of their innocence, but I mean,
no, because they weren't virgins, right? They weren't virgins on this road trip, which I think is also important because you don't want Louisa to be like the deflowerer, right? She's just giving them a new sexual awakening and experience, and discovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. But
I don't know, but
the movie is wonderful, and
I agree.
Yeah,
and I think that's such a brilliant way to cap off a coming of age story of just a gut punch.
Yeah,
that things didn't actually work out. That yes, nothing will ever be the same, but things will things drastically changed after that summer ended.
Yeah.
Yeah. If everyone wants a feel good coming of age story, go watch Stand By Me, which isn't technically a feel good because it revolves around best friend seeing a dead body. I guess watch Spider-Man: Homecoming. That's technically a coming of age movie.
Sure.
Okay, there was one other thing I wanted to bring up.
Sure.
Before we get to getting ready for wrapping up. It was the fact that Gael and Diego looked so young.
Yeah.
I did the math. When this movie came out, they were 22 and 23 respectively. And I'm like, they look like babies.
I know, they do. They look really young. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like if you watch Andor with Diego or Werewolf by Night with Gael, completely different. Gael's really proud that his hair is gray now because I don't think he's covering it.
He's going gray, which is crazy because this movie is only 24, 23 years old. Which I guess that is a long time, but he's
but I mean if you look at Diego, gorgeous black hair, like and oddly enough, sidebar, I'm sure you knew this, they're best friends in real life, even before they did this movie. Apparently they grew up together.
Yes. Gael asked for Diego to be in the movie because Alfonso Cuarón's like, no, he doesn't. He's not right for it. I don't want him for it. I think he's a teen.
He's a teen idol.
He was a teen heartthrob. Yeah, he was. Apparently, he was on a soap opera in Mexico, and he was a huge star. Like a teen, he was like basically Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy that you made that comparison. So what you're saying is Diego Luna is the Mexican Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Yes. And Bernal is like, listen, like I know, I get it, but I promise, like we're already friends. It's gonna work great. The chemistry's already there. Like we're already buddies. He goes, fine, we'll give it a shot, and then you get this, and then it's perfect, right? And I'm glad that they're still friends. Yeah. That makes me so happy that they're still friends.
And as we mentioned last week, and throughout the episode, they both love this movie so much. You know, when Gael did his episode of the Criterion Closet, I think this was like the third or fourth movie he picked out.
Yeah.
You know, so it was very early on, and you know, he, you know, had nothing but fantastic things to say. Because I mean, I think the film speaks for itself. I mean, hopefully, we did a good job of wanting people to go see this movie.
Yeah.
But then, as we've been saying throughout the episode, you know, Diego, that was the first movie he talked about in that Variety interview. Because I think he was doing like I think it was like their series, like Rewind My Career kind of thing.
I see.
And that was like one of the first movies he talked about. And so, you know, they both clearly still love this film. And I tried to find some stuff with Maribel. Like, I wanted to see if maybe she's talked about it, but she's only been more recently getting into English speaking films.
Oh, okay.
Like that movie I mentioned a couple weeks ago, Ray and Raymond, with Ewan McGregor and Ethan Hawke.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that was her because she doesn't look that different, but like she's speaking English, and so it didn't register with me. That's who it was, but
right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like I saw an interview with her doing press for that movie, and you know, and again, if I'm sure I've said it when I brought that movie up, that movie's fine. If you have an Apple TV Plus subscription, I mean, watch it. It's fine. Ethan and Ewan actually have really good chemistry. That was the only reason why I watched it, because their chemistry was actually really, really good. Maribel wasn't necessarily underutilized, but they kind of rushed her character arc a little too much, where Ewan McGregor's character falls in love with her after like a day.
I mean,
they
makes
get
sense. It's typecast.
I mean, that's true. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, the movie's phenomenal. I'm glad I now own it on Criterion.
Yeah, of course. No, it's awesome. Yeah.
I for sure I'm gonna have to rewatch it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to maybe convince Ashley to watch it with me. To be honest, she probably won't get past the sex stuff just because
maybe not. Yeah.
She's very much of the mind of the same of Henry Cavill. Like sex scenes and movies just shouldn't be there.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, Haley was out of town, so I watched it by myself. But I don't think she would have liked it either, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely see it. I'm so happy you loved it. And yeah. That was Tu Mama Tambien. What are we doing next week?
So next week, it is my final pick because Jeremy, we're getting close to the
we're getting there.
The wrap up of this season. So this is my final pick. You already know what it is.
I do.
Before I announce it to everyone, I just want to mention that this is a film that is apparently very divisive amongst a lot of people. I remember telling you about an article I read called "It's the film that A24 wants to forget." And you know what? To be honest, that makes me want to watch it even more. Like the fact that supposedly A24 is even trying to be like, "Hey, forget about this movie. Don't pay attention to this movie." So next week we are discussing the 2018, and I'm reading verbatim because I like this description, the 2018 surrealist neo-noir black comedy mystery film Under the Silver Lake. The only thing I know about this film is it's got Andrew Garfield in it, and Riley Coe, and that's it.
Yeah, I remember seeing previews for this film. I remember thinking it was really interesting. I just saw that it's the same writer-director of It Follows, which is interesting.
Okay.
I like It Follows a lot. I think that's an awesome horror film. But this one, I think I may have even tried to watch it once. but I don't really remember. So we're just gonna go ahead and say I didn't do that because I don't remember anything about it. And yeah, it looks super bizarre, and it looks like it's gonna be weird and hard to follow. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, the praise for the film was the originality, direction, soundtrack, cinematography, and of course, Andrew Garfield's performance. That was the praise. But a lot of people found the screenplay too confusing and too cryptic, is what it says.
Okay.
Which again makes me just want to watch it more. It makes me wonder if this is, hang on, I had his name up, the writer-director, David Robert Mitchell. It makes me wonder if this is his take on trying to do a Lynch film.
Maybe.
You know, because surrealist neo-noir black comedy mystery makes me think of our earlier, just a few weeks ago, episode on Lost Highway.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's trying to do something sort of Lynchian in this, which, yeah, who knows? I'm excited. We're gonna watch it. We're gonna see how it goes. I know that you can watch it on, I believe it's HBO Max. It's on there, I think.
I don't know. I physically bought it because I went through this whole thing where I was like, I'm gonna own not necessarily every A24 film, but I was like, I'm going to own the ones that really stand out to me.
Yeah.
And this was one of them, so sure. I physically have it.
Cool. All right, Under the Silver Lake. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Super excited. I will never say no to Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, of course.
All right, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode on Tu Mama Tambien, and we will see you next week for Under the Silver Lake.